The skies over Seoul burned crimson as the last evacuation ships prepared for departure. Director Kim stood on the observation deck, his weathered face illuminated by emergency lights. He had not slept in 3 days, but exhaustion had given way to a hollow numbness. Behind him, technicians worked frantically at their stations. "Status report," he demanded, voice steady despite everything. Officer Lee approached, her uniform neat despite the chaos around them. She consulted her tablet, the blue light casting shadows across her face. 15 million passengers secured across the fleet. That's all we could manage. 15 million out of billions. Kim closed his eyes briefly. The numbers felt unreal clinical. Each person left behind was someone's family, someone's love, someone's entire world. "And the horizon?" he asked, referring to the flagship of their desperate armada. "Final preparations complete. We launch in 20 minutes. Kim nodded grimly. Earth had finally surrendered to centuries of abuse. The atmosphere barely breathable, the oceans acidified beyond recovery, and the final resource wars had claimed billions. This exodus represented humanity's last desperate gamble. Through the viewport, he could see Seoul's once magnificent skyline now crumbling under the strain of environmental collapse. The Han River had dried to a trickle months ago. The famous Seoul Tower had collapsed during last year's megastorm. Millions had already perished from starvation, disease, and conflict. "What about the bunker project?" Kim asked, still clinging to hope. Lee's expression tightened. "Unknown. Communications with President Park's team went dark 3 days ago." The bunkers were humanity's other gamble. Massive underground complexes designed to sustain limited populations through Earth's death throes. The plan had always been a last resort, considered too risky by many experts. But with evacuation ships limited, it had become the only option for billions. Kim turned to Commander Ju, who stood analyzing security feeds. "Any word from the other launch sites?" New Beijing completed launch 2 hours ago. Moscow and Lagos are airborne. Toronto had complications. Zhu hesitated. Their ship was overrun during boarding. No survivors. Kim absorbed this with a slight stiffening of his shoulders. And the protests. Military containment has held so far, but it's getting worse. People know these are the last ships. Outside the secure perimeter of the Seoul spaceport, millions had gathered in desperate hope of somehow securing passage. The global lottery system had selected evacuees months ago, but as the reality of being left behind settled in, desperation had turned violent. The massive generation ships rumbled to life, their engines straining against Earth's gravity. The floor beneath them vibrated with building power. Each ship carried part of humanity's legacy. Genetic banks, cultural archives, technological blueprints, everything needed to rebuild civilization somewhere among the stars. "Sir," Officer Lee said quietly, "it's time." Kim nodded, following her through the corridor to the bridge. The walk felt both endless and too short. Each step took him further from everything he'd known, from the world that had nurtured humanity for countless generations. On the bridge, the command crew worked with quiet efficiency. Captain Nam nodded respectfully as Kim entered. "Director, all ships report ready for synchronized launch." "Proceed," Kim ordered. Nam turned to his communications officer. "Send the final launch code. Authorization Exodus Prime." The ship shuddered as its massive engines engaged fully. Through the main viewport, Kim watched as 5 other colossal ships rose alongside theirs, breaking free from their cradles. As they ascended through the atmosphere, Kim watched his homeworld shrink beneath him. The continents were barely recognizable now. Dust storms obscured most of Asia, while vast dead zones of brown and gray had replaced the green that once covered much of Earth. "Sir," Nam said, "we're receiving an emergency broadcast. It's from the presidential bunker." Kim's head snapped up. "Put it through." The voice of President Park came through, distorted but recognizable. "To all Exodus vessels, we have secured the primary bunker network. 400,000 souls have been saved. We will attempt to preserve what remains, May your journey bring you to safe harbor among the stars. Earth will wait for your return." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving silence on the bridge. Should we respond? Nam asked. Kim considered this, then shook his head. No, better not to give away their position. Not with what's coming. As the ships climbed higher, the curve of Earth became apparent, a wounded blue marble suspended in darkness. Kim had seen the projections. Within months, the ecosystem collapse would accelerate beyond any hope of recovery. The atmosphere would continue deteriorating, radiation levels would rise, and a remaining population would face impossible conditions. "All ships have cleared atmosphere," reported the navigation officer, setting course for interstellar insertion. Kim nodded, but found himself unable to look away from Earth. How had it come to this? Centuries of warnings, decades of catastrophic weather, years of open resource wars. And still, humanity had failed to change course until it was too late. Across the galaxy, the news spread quickly through subspace communications. The Voron diplomatic attaché, a tall, gray-skinned being with 4 arms, delivered a terse statement to the Galactic Congress on Nexus Prime. The species known as humanity has failed to achieve sustainability. Their homeworld is lost. We claim salvage rights to their former territories and abandoned colonies. The motion passed without objection. The Phelan representative merely commented, "Another technological species destroyed by its own success." Predictable, if disappointing. The Congress Secretary updated the official records. Sol System and associated human territories now designated for reclamation. Species status: critically endangered, projected extinction within 5 standard cycles. Humanity was officially cataloged among the failed species of the galaxy, joining dozens of others who had risen to technological prominence only to destroy themselves before achieving true interstellar stability. Back on the horizon, Director Kim finally turned away from the viewport as Earth became a small blue dot, then vanished entirely. "Status of the fleet?" he asked. "All ships functioning normally. Long-range scans clear. Cryogenic preparation beginning for first rotation." Kim nodded. "Then we continue as planned. Set course for the Proxima staging area." The journey ahead would span generations. Many of those boarding would never see their destination. But humanity would endure. It had to. As the ships accelerated toward the stars, no one noticed the small, unmarked vessel observing them from the shadow of Earth's moon. Its occupants transmitted one final message before following. "The seedlings have departed. The harvest will come in time." 100 years later, Captain Han surveyed the crowded corridors of Generation Ship Perseverance. The vessel, designed for 50 years of travel, had been their home for a century. The metal walls, once pristine white, had yellowed with age. Makeshift extensions jutted from original structures, creating a maze-like environment where 3 generations now lived together. Han ran his hand along a wall panel, feeling the vibration that never ceased. The ship's engines had operated continuously for a century, a feat of engineering that defied the original specifications. But miracles of human ingenuity could only stretch so far. Children darted between adults in the narrow passage, their laughter a bright counterpoint to the ship's constant mechanical hum. One small boy, no more than 6, crashed into Han's legs. "Sorry, Captain." The child looked up with wide eyes before running off again. Han smiled briefly. These children had never known Earth or even solid ground. The ship was their entire universe. They deserved more than metal corridors and recycled air. Officer Song approached, her uniform worn but meticulously clean. At 55, she had been born on the ship and risen through the ranks with remarkable efficiency. The data tablet in her hand displayed the resource management report Han had been dreading. "We can't continue like this," she said quietly, her voice low enough that passing crew members wouldn't hear. "Resources are critically low." Han guided her into a small conference room just off the main corridor. The space was barely large enough for the small table and 4 chairs it contained, but it offered rare privacy. "How bad?" he asked, once the door closed behind them. Song placed the tablet between them. "Water recyclers are at 63% efficiency and falling. Hydroponics yield dropped 12% last month. Oxygen generation is stable, but only because population control measures have kept our numbers from growing." She paused. "And our fuel reserves will only support life support for another 8 months at current consumption rates." Han studied the data, though he had anticipated most of it. The ship's systems were simply wearing out faster than they could be repaired, and replacement materials were nearly exhausted. He nodded. "Then we implement the scattered seeds protocol." Song's eyes widened slightly. The controversial strategy had been developed by Admiral Moon decades earlier. Rather than keeping the fleet together, humanity would disperse across hundreds of star systems, establishing hidden outposts and adapting to local conditions. The plan had been considered too risky by the previous captain, who had hoped to find one perfect world where all humans could settle together. "The other ship captains may resist," Song warned. "Captain Gill on the Endurance still believes we should stay united." "Captain Gill hasn't seen these numbers," Han replied. "And even if he has similar reports, the Endurance was designed with better recycling systems. They might have another decade before facing our situation. We don't have that luxury." Han called an emergency captain's council the following day. The holographic meeting brought together the leaders of the 12 remaining ships of the Exodus fleet. 3 ships had been lost over the century, 1 to an asteroid collision, 1 to life support failure, and 1 to a mysterious malfunction that some still whispered had been sabotage. "Our situation is unsustainable," Han explained, sharing the resource projections with his colleagues. "We've stretched these ships far beyond their limits. It's time to find planets and moons where we can establish permanent settlements." Captain Gill, a heavy-set man with a thick beard, frowned. "The goal was always to find one world suitable for all of us. Unity is our strength." "Unity was our strength when we faced immediate extinction," Han countered. "Now adaptation must be our priority. Different human groups can adapt to different environments. We increase our chances of survival by diversifying." The debate raged for hours before a majority of captains agreed with Han's assessment. The scattered seeds protocol would begin immediately. 2 weeks later, Han stood on the bridge of Perseverance as the navigation officer plotted potential target systems. "The Phelan border patrols have increased," Song warned, studying security reports. "They've categorized us as a refugee species. We have no territorial rights." The Phelan Empire had expanded considerably during humanity's century of space travel. Once a minor power, they now controlled much of the region where human colonies had been planned. Their crystalline ships were technologically superior to anything the Exodus fleet could muster. Han's eyes hardened. "Then we don't ask for permission. Humanity survives, whatever it takes." The fleet split into smaller groups over the following months, using stealth technologies developed during their century of travel to evade alien detection. Han led 3 ships to a remote system with a red dwarf star, where scans had indicated a small rocky moon with subsurface water. Landing was treacherous. The Perseverance was never designed to make planetfall, so Han ordered the construction of shuttle crafts, using materials salvaged from the ship's outer hull. The first landing party included engineers, geologists, and security personnel. 3 months later, Han stood on the surface of the small rocky moon, watching as the first habitat modules were assembled. The landscape was barren, gray rocks stretching to a horizon closer than Earth's had been, under a black sky where the red star provided minimal light. But underground sensors had confirmed vast reservoirs of water ice, and the first drilling operation had been successful. "It's not much to look at," Song said, standing beside him in her environmental suit. "It's not Earth," Han agreed, "but it's ours." The colony grew steadily over the next year. Similar scenes played out across dozens of remote systems, humans adapting, surviving, remembering Earth but looking forward. They developed unique technologies born of necessity and scarcity, innovations that more established species would never have contemplated. On Han's moon, which colonists named Haven, they perfected techniques for living primarily underground, harvesting energy from the core's heat rather than the dim star above. They learned to grow food in carefully engineered caverns, using artificial light and recycled nutrients. 5 years after the landing, Han received an encrypted communication from Captain Gill. The message was brief. Phalon Patrol discovered Endurance Colony. No survivors. They're hunting us systematically. Stay hidden. That night, Han stood alone on the surface, looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, humanity was taking root on dozens of worlds, adapting, evolving, becoming something new. Some colonies would fail. Others would thrive in ways he couldn't imagine. "We will endure," he whispered to the darkness, "and someday we will return." Behind him, the lights of the colony entrance cast his shadow long across the cratered surface of humanity's new beginning. 3 centuries after the Exodus, mining engineer Choi floated in zero gravity, her magnetic boots detached from the hull of the asteroid she was surveying. The tiny rock, barely 2 kilometers across, drifted in the outer reaches of the Ta-Ceti system, far from the small human settlement established on the system's 4th planet. These isolated mining operations were how humanity had survived, extracting resources from uninhabited rocks, staying invisible to the larger galactic powers. Choi adjusted her scanner, frowning at the readings. The device was detecting something unusual in the mineral composition. She tapped her helmet, activating her comms link. "Base, this is Choi. I'm getting strange readings from Sector 7. "Copy that, Choi," the voice of Operations Officer Min replied. "What kind of readings?" "Not sure. It's like..." She paused, making a small adjustment to her position. The scanner beeped more rapidly. "Wait, this isn't mineral. I'm detecting artificial signals." She froze as the scanner locked onto the frequency. "Origin. Sol system." There was a long silence on the comm. "Repeat that, Choi," Min finally said, his voice tight with tension. "I'm detecting artificial signals. Origin. Sol system. Earth is transmitting." For 3 centuries, humanity had believed Earth was dead. The Exodus fleet had received no communications after departure. Occasional stealth probes sent back over the decades have found only a toxic wasteland with radiation levels too high for human survival. 12 hours later, Choi sat in a secured room at the colony's administration building. Admiral Park herself had arrived from the hidden fleet headquarters in the neighboring system. The admiral was a tall woman with short gray hair and eyes that seemed to calculate everything they saw. "Show me exactly what you found," Park ordered. Choi connected her scanner to the room's display system. It was faint, but unmistakable. A repeating pattern on a frequency we haven't used in centuries. She pointed to the waveform on the screen. "See these markers? They're using an old Exodus fleet emergency code." Park studied the signal, her expression unreadable. "This could be a trap. The Voron Confederacy has been increasing patrols near human settlements. They could have found our old communication protocols." "But if it's not a trap," asked Governor Jin, the colony's civilian leader, "if Earth somehow survived?" Park was quiet for a long moment. Then everything changes. The classified mission launched within days. The HSS Shadow, humanity's most advanced stealth vessel, prepared for the dangerous journey. The ship incorporated technology unknown to other galactic species, adaptive hull plating that absorbed sensor scans and propulsion systems that left no traditional energy signature. Captain Kang studied the mission briefing with his executive officer, Commander Ryu. 6 wormhole jumps, Ryu noted, 3 through contested space. "If we're detected." "We won't be," Kang interrupted. "This ship has slipped past Phalon patrols within 1,000 kilometers. We can handle this." Admiral Park joined them on the bridge for departure. "You understand the importance of this mission, Captain." It wasn't a question, but Kang nodded anyway. "If Earth survived, It changes our entire strategy. We're no longer refugees hoping to avoid extinction. We're a species reclaiming its birthright. The shadows slipped away from the hidden dock, accelerating quickly to jump speed. Each wormhole transit brought them closer to the Sol system, the forbidden zone that most spacefaring species avoided due to lingering radiation and the Voron claim on the territory. The final approach was the most dangerous. 2 Voron patrol vessels guarded the outer system. The shadow drifted silently past them, its systems in minimal power mode to avoid detection. Approaching Earth orbit, reported. Sensors detecting. Unusual readings. Park moved to the sensor station. Explain. The radiation levels are lower than our last probe reported, and I'm detecting large power signatures beneath the surface. There's also, Ryu paused, adjusting the controls. There's an artificial satellite network in low orbit. The bridge fell silent as the ship moved into position above Earth's night side. The planet's surface was dark, showing none of the light pollution that had once defined human civilization. But as they watched, pinpricks of light appeared along what had once been coastlines, now dramatically altered by centuries of climate change. "Those are access points," Park said softly. "They're coming up from below." The shadow established orbit and began more detailed scans. What they discovered defied all expectations. Earth, not dead, but transformed. Where surface cities had once stood, massive entry systems now connected to vast underground complexes. The atmosphere was still toxic to unprotected humans, but slowly improving. "We're being scanned," Roy reported suddenly. "Something on the surface has locked onto us." Before Park could respond, a communication request came through on an old emergency frequency. "Unknown vessel," a calm voice said in archaic but recognizable Korean. "You are in Earth Continuance Authority space. Identify yourself." Park took a deep breath and stepped forward. "This is Admiral Park of the Human Exodus Fleet. We have returned to Earth." The response was immediate. "Stand by for approach coordinates. Welcome home, cousins." 24 hours later, Park stood in an underground city that stretched for kilometers in every direction. The ceiling glowed with artificial sunlight. Trees and plants grew in carefully maintained parks. People moved about their daily routines, stopping occasionally to stare at the visitors in their strange uniforms. President Yoon of the Earth Continuance Authority greeted them in a grand hall carved from what had once been bedrock beneath Old Seoul. He was a tall, lean man with the bearing of someone used to authority. 400,000, Yoon explained, answering Park's question. "That's how many made it into the bunkers before the final collapse. We thought that would be the end, surviving a few more years underground before resources ran out." He smiled. "Instead, we adapted. We expanded downward. We developed technologies to sustain ourselves. Now our population stands at 15 million, spread across 12 underground arcologies." "We thought we were the last," Park whispered, still struggling to process what she was seeing. Yoon smiled. "And we thought no one escaped. Instead, both branches of humanity endured." Over the following days, the two groups shared their histories. The underground civilization had developed remarkable biotechnology and quantum engineering. They had learned to manipulate their own genetics to better survive in their subterranean environment. Their quantum computers could solve problems that the Exodus fleet had never even conceptualized. The Exodus humans brought space exploration expertise and a network of hidden colonies. They had mapped safe routes through contested space and developed stealth technologies that kept them safe from alien powers. "Together," Park said during the final strategic meeting, "we can accomplish what neither of us could alone." Yoon nodded. "The United Human Alliance. Earth and stars, reunited." "But in secret," Park cautioned. "The galaxy believes humanity is a scattered refugee species of no consequence. That misconception has protected my people for centuries. And the galaxy believes Earth is a dead world." Yoon agreed. "That misconception has protected mine. So we maintain both illusions, while secretly combining our strengths. As Park's team prepared to return to their colonies with representatives from Earth, she stood at a viewport overlooking the underground city. Engineer Choi joined her, still amazed by what they'd discovered. "I never thought I'd see Earth," Choi said quietly, "even if it's from inside." "This is just the beginning," Park replied. "For 3 centuries, survival was our only goal. Now we can start thinking about reclamation." Above them, through kilometers of rock and reinforced structures, the toxic skies of Earth continued their slow healing. And for the first time since the Exodus, humanity looked to the future not with fear, but with purpose. Director Kang reviewed intelligence reports on the Voron occupation of New Busan, once humanity's most prosperous colony. Now alien architecture dominated the skyline, crystalline spires that glowed purple at night, curved buildings that seemed to defy gravity, and massive processing centers that extracted resources with brutal efficiency. The holographic display in the command center showed detailed scans of the planet. What had once been rolling hills covered with human settlements was now a landscape transformed by alien technology. The Great Bay where the first colonists had landed was filled with Voron docking facilities for their mining ships. Kang's face remained expressionless as he studied the images, but his fingers tightened around the edge of the display table. He had been born on New Busan, though evacuated as a child when the Voron claimed it during their expansion. The memories were faint but still painful. The panic as evacuation alarms sounded, his mother's tears as they boarded the last transport. "Their defenses?" he asked, voice steady despite the emotions churning within him. Colonel Ba, a compact woman with short-cropped hair and eyes that missed nothing, stepped forward. She highlighted sections of the holographic map with quick gestures. Red markers appeared throughout the display, showing weapons emplacements, sensor arrays, and patrol routes. "Substantial, but they don't expect us. They believe humans are a scattered nomadic species." She zoomed in on the main defensive grid control center. "Their security protocols are designed to repel raids from smugglers or pirates. They have no contingency for a coordinated planetary assault." Kang nodded slowly. "And our people?" 8,000 humans still live on New Busan," they replied, "mostly as service workers and manual laborers. The Voron consider them primitives, useful for tasks they find beneath them." She brought up population distribution maps. "Our operatives have made contact with key individuals. They're ready when we are." The door to the command center slid open, and President Yoon entered. Though nearly 80 years old, he moved with the confidence of a much younger man, a benefit of Earth's advanced biotechnology. "The Council has approved the reclamation plan," Yoon announced. "Operation Homecoming begins now." Kang bowed slightly. "We won't fail, Mr. President." Over the next 5 years, humanity quietly reclaimed former territories through economic infiltration, diplomatic maneuvering, and precise military operations. Human-owned shell corporations, operating through alien proxies, purchased strategic assets throughout former human space. Displaced humans organized into resistance movements, gathering intelligence and preparing for liberation. On New Busan, the changes began subtly. A Voron shipping company, secretly acquired by a human front corporation, began experiencing mysterious delays and routing errors. Critical components for defense systems arrived damaged or not at all. Communication relays suffered random outages. Jin worked as a cleaner in the Voron Administrative Center. To her employers, she was just another human servant, invisible and unimportant. They never noticed when she placed tiny transmitters in ventilation ducts or copied secure files while dusting computer terminals. "The northern grid will be down for maintenance next Tuesday," she told the small group gathered in her tiny apartment. "For exactly 17 minutes. Minho, once a teacher and now the leader of their cell, nodded. "That's our window. The supply ship will arrive during that gap." The supply ship brought not goods but weapons and advanced communication equipment, smuggled past Voron sensors. Similar scenarios played out across dozens of worlds that had once been human colonies. In the Sol system, within the orbit of Neptune, construction proceeded on a massive project hidden from galactic detection by advanced cloaking technology. The Neptune shipyards took shape over years, assembled by specialized drones and supervised by the best engineers from Earth and the Exodus colonies. Admiral Joe inspected the progress regularly, his expectations exacting. Today he floated in zero gravity alongside the chief engineer, surveying the nearly completed primary assembly bay. "Will it be ready?" Joe asked. Engineer Huang gestured at the massive structure before them. "On schedule, Admiral. The first battleships are already in final testing. The carriers will be operational within 2 months." Joe nodded with satisfaction. For a decade, they had worked in absolute secrecy, building a fleet unlike anything humanity had possessed even before the Exodus. The ships incorporated the best of Earth's quantum engineering with the stealth technology developed by the Exodus colonies. Some systems used principles that even the most advanced galactic powers had yet to discover. "And the Phoenix Protocol?" Joe asked. "Ready for your command," Wang confirmed. The day of reckoning approached faster than anyone had anticipated. On New Buzan, a Voron security officer became suspicious of the increasing equipment failures. He ordered a deep scan of all human workers' living quarters. Jin received the warning just minutes before the security teams arrived. She sent the emergency signal, then destroyed her communication device. Across New Buzan, human resistance cells activated simultaneously, years ahead of schedule. Director Kang received the alert in the middle of a planning session. "New Buzan has gone hot," he announced to the startled officers. "Resistance has engaged. Move up the timetable." Admiral Joe was awakened by the priority alert. He dressed quickly and made his way to the Neptune Shipyard Command Center. "Status," he demanded as he entered. "New Buzan resistance has engaged Voron security forces," replied his executive officer. "They can't hold out long without support." Joe made his decision instantly. "Launch the fleet. All ships. Phoenix Protocol is now active." Throughout the Neptune shipyards, klaxons sounded. Crew members rushed to their stations. Engines that had never been used outside of testing flared to life. Massive bay doors opened, revealing ships that represented the pinnacle of human engineering. The Voron governor of New Buzan was in his private chambers when the alarms began. He rushed to the command center, his crystalline skin flashing with patterns of agitation. "What is happening?" he demanded. "Human insurgents," his security chief replied. "They've taken control of the southern district and disabled our orbital sensors." The governor made a gesture of dismissal. "Crush them. They are primitives." "Sir," the sensor operator interrupted, "we're detecting multiple unidentified vessels entering the system." "Pirates," the governor said dismissively. "Deal with them after the insurgents." The sensor operator's voice rose in alarm. "Sir, these aren't pirate vessels. I've never seen configurations like these. Energy readings are off the scale." Above New Buzan, space seemed to ripple as the cloaking fields dropped, revealing a fleet of ships that gleamed silver in the sunlight. At their center, the massive flagship Phoenix brought its weapons systems online. From his command chair, Admiral Joe surveyed the tactical display. New Buzan was just the beginning. Across former human space, similar fleets were revealing themselves near other occupied colonies. "Open a channel," Joe ordered. "All frequencies, all languages." When the communications officer nodded, Joe stood, his posture straight with pride. "This is Admiral Joe of the United Human Alliance," he began, his voice carrying to every corner of New Buzan and beyond, to listening posts throughout the galaxy. "To all sentient species, for centuries you have believed humanity was a failed experiment, a species on the edge of extinction. You were wrong." On the surface, Jin and her resistance fighters heard the message and fought with renewed vigor. "Humanity is not lost," Joe continued. "We have returned, and we are stronger than ever. To those who have occupied our worlds, you have a choice: withdraw peacefully, or face the consequences of your trespass." The broadcast ended, leaving stunned silence in its wake. The Phoenix Protocol had begun. Humanity's reclamation was no longer a secret hope, but an undeniable reality that would reshape the galaxy. The Great Hall of the restored United Nations building in New Geneva gleamed with natural light. Where once there had been only toxic skies, now sunshine streamed through crystal domes. The room hummed with the soft sounds of translation devices as representatives from 50 different species settled into their seats. Global Congress Chairwoman Shin stood at the center podium, her simple white uniform a stark contrast to the colorful and varied clothing of the alien delegates. At 73, she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had witnessed humanity's greatest triumph. "Honored representatives," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the hall. "Welcome to Earth." Many of the delegates shifted uncomfortably. For centuries, Earth had been known as a dead world, a cautionary tale of environmental collapse. Now they sat on its surface, breathing its air, witnessing firsthand the impossible transformation. For centuries, humanity was dismissed as a failed experiment, Shin continued. When our world began to die, many of your governments catalogued us among extinct species. Others classified us as refugees with no territorial rights. She paused, looking directly at the Voron delegation. Some claimed our worlds as salvage. The Voron representatives' crystalline skin flickered with patterns of discomfort. Since the implementation of the Phoenix Protocol 5 years earlier, the Voron Confederacy had lost significant territory and political standing. "Our near extinction taught us what truly matters," Shin said, her tone softening. "Not power for its sake, not expansion without purpose, but life in all its forms and the wisdom to protect it." She spread her hands wide. "We offer the galaxy not conquest, but partnership." Outside the hall, Earth showed evidence of its remarkable recovery. Mountains once stripped bare now grew with engineered forests that processed carbon at 10 times the rate of their natural ancestors. Oceans once acidified beyond recovery now teemed with specially adapted marine life. The Great Plains of North America, once dust bowls, now flourished with crops developed to thrive in the changed climate. After Shin's address, delegates toured these restoration zones. The Phelan ambassador, a tall being with iridescent skin, stood beside Earth's chief ecologist at the edge of a reclaimed lake. "Impossible," the ambassador murmured. "Our scientists determined this planet was beyond saving." "Your scientists were working with old assumptions," the ecologist replied. "They didn't account for our underground civilization's 3 centuries of biotechnology development." The Sol Commonwealth quickly established itself as a new power in galactic politics, not through military might alone, though the fleet that had liberated the human colonies remained vigilant. Rather, humanity's unique technologies and resilient approach to seemingly insurmountable problems made them valuable allies. Human innovations in sustainable dimensional gateway technology revolutionized interstellar travel, where other species had developed unstable wormhole generators that required massive energy and often collapsed. Human gateways used quantum principles developed in Earth's underground cities to create stable passages requiring a fraction of the power. Trade routes that once took months to traverse could now be completed in days. Worlds previously too distant for practical commerce suddenly found themselves connected to the galactic economy, and humanity controlled the technology. 6 months after the summit, Director Kang met with representatives from former colony worlds in the New Alliance Chamber on Mars. The Red Planet, once considered a harsh frontier outpost, had been transformed into humanity's second capital. New Busan's reconstruction is progressing ahead of schedule, reported Governor Jin, once a resistance fighter and now the elected leader of the liberated world. The last Voron structures are being repurposed for human use. "And the Voron who wish to remain?" Kang asked. "Living peacefully among us," Jin confirmed. "They're finding that cooperation can be more profitable than domination." Similar reports came from other reclaimed worlds. Former human colonies were liberated and restored, not through vengeance, but through a careful balance of strength and diplomacy. Where alien populations had settled, they were offered citizenship in the new Commonwealth rather than expulsion. On the anniversary of the Phoenix Protocol, Supreme Commander Jung, who had led many of the reclamation campaigns, stood on the observation deck of Earth's orbital headquarters. The massive ring station circled the planet, its curved windows offering spectacular views of the recovering world below. Vessels from dozens of species docked at the station, arriving for trade and diplomatic missions. Among them was the first official Voron diplomatic ship, its crystalline design modified to include elements of human architecture, a visible symbol of the changing relationship. Jung's young aide, Lieutenant Min, joined him at the viewport. "Impressive sight, isn't it, sir?" Jung nodded. "When I was your age, we hid in the shadows of these same species. Now they come to us as equals." Min watched a massive Phelan trade vessel dock at the commercial section. "Do you think we've secured our place?" she asked. Jung considered the question, remembering the centuries of struggle, the desperate fight for survival that had forged humanity into something new. "The galaxy thought our greatest strength was our technology or our numbers," he said finally. "They were wrong. Our greatest strength is that we faced extinction and refused to accept it." Below them, Earth gleamed blue and green once more, a testament to humanity's most defining quality: resilience. Clouds swirled over healing oceans. The lights of restored cities twinkled into view as the Terminator line of night swept across the planet. In one of those cities, children who had never known the underground arcologies played in parks where the soil had been painstakingly detoxified. Their grandparents, who remembered Earth only as stories passed down through generations on Exodus ships, watched with tears in their eyes. In Earth orbit, researchers from 12 species worked side by side in the new Cooperative Sciences Station, adapting human biotechnology to heal damaged worlds throughout the galaxy. And at the edge of the Sol system, where Neptune's blue form drifted against the void, the shipyards that had built humanity's liberation fleet now constructed vessels of exploration. Their mission was no longer to hide or to reclaim, but to discover, pushing outward into regions of space no sentient species had yet reached. Humanity had returned from the brink of extinction, reunited its scattered pieces, and emerged not as conquerors but as innovators. The species that had once been written off as a failed experiment had become the architects of a renaissance that spread across the stars. In the words of the Phoenix Protocol, broadcast during humanity's moment of return, "We are not lost. We have returned, stronger than ever." The end.